Under this grass lie the remains of a community, a cemetery containing the grave goods and mortal remains of the people who lived and farmed in this part of Britain 1,500 years ago. But also buried here are some questions we want to answer. Will we be able to find the brooches and beads and swords which will tell us where these families came from? How big will this site be? And why is an Anglo-Saxon cemetery covered in Roman pottery? Time Team have been given a fantastic opportunity to investigate this intriguing site and hopefully solve some of its mysteries. And as usual, we've got just 3 days to do it. The investigation into our Anglo-Saxon cemetery starts in this Lincolnshire field. It's a big site, so Geophys and Stuart have already been out for a couple of hours surveying, watched by an unusually captive audience. Mick, why are we so certain that there is an Anglo-Saxon cemetery here?
Because they put a pipe in some years ago and you looked at the trench that was dug and you found burials along it.
That's right, yes.
So presumably what we can do now is get John to geophys the field. He can identify where the bodies are and then we can excavate them.
Not quite that easy.
Because?
Burials are really difficult targets for us. We don't have a bone detector as such. We detect the graves into which the burials are placed. Now, when they dug the pipe trench a couple of years ago, the bodies were really close to the surface. There was no deep grave.
So presumably that makes it easier for you?
No, it actually makes it more difficult because we're not seeing the body and we're not actually seeing the grave either.
If you dig into clay and then fill the grave with clay, you've got clay in clay. You know, it's very difficult to spot.
This is the first chance anyone's had to fully investigate this site. The 1998 dig that discovered 28 burials was limited to the area directly around the new water pipe. But we don't have those restrictions. Although we know there's a cemetery here, we haven't got viable geophys to plan our excavation.
So we want to start 10 metres that way?
I think 15 metres.
So we're going to have to use the water pipe as our main reference.
If you start your trench here, going in that direction, you're bound to hit burials according to their plan. That's the centre line of the pipe.
Yeah.
We've got the manhole cover at the point up here, and we've got the point on the fence that lines up with the church.
The water company says the plastic pipe goes through here. The problem is, although geophys can't see the pipe, their results for the area suggest it may actually run through here.
The point I'm making is, on the geophysics, there's our distance from the edge, 10. If we go another 10, then we're there.
Oh, right. So it doesn't match up.
So it doesn't match up with the geophysics at all.
John's frankly not happy. But we have to get on, so we're going to strip this area just to the left of where the pipe is supposed to be. We hope to find the edge of the previous dig.
So if you could put all the spoil on that side.
And then extend into unexplored territory. And because we know the depth of the topsoil, we can use a mechanical digger to help us reach the archaeology. As well as having free range over the site, our other advantage is that we know we're looking for burials, unlike the archaeologists on the earlier excavation.
Originally, the site had been flagged up because Roman pottery had been found back in 1954 when an earlier water pipeline was laid, and people thought there might be the site of a Roman villa.
So you thought you were looking for a villa and
That's
Saxon
right.
cemetery turns up.
It seems a bit weird to me, the idea of an Anglo-Saxon cemetery in what appears to be a Roman settlement.
Well, that's a very interesting thing. People have noticed elsewhere that there seems to be some sort of relationship between cemeteries and Roman sites, particularly high-status Roman sites, which is why even though there really is very little evidence of a Roman villa in the records, it's quite possible that there was a high-status site of some sort very close by.
The Roman connection is obviously an important aspect of this site, and one we've got to investigate. Carenza's been looking into other Anglo-Saxon cemeteries around Lincolnshire, and she's found that very often there's a relationship between their size and shape and previous Roman occupation of the land. Thankfully, geophys have had much better luck detecting Roman activity, and Trench 2, over a probable Roman ditch, will evaluate their findings so far.
Phil, come have a look at this.
In the adjacent field, though, evidence of Roman occupation is much more obvious.
Good Lord.
You see, it's cut through all this stonework here. But look at this.
It's a Roman pot.
See that bit there? That looks like Samian ware to
No
me.
question, that is Samian ware.
Nice, isn't it? There are other bits as well. There's this stuff here, which looks like black burnish ware, which is Roman period. And there's other bits of pottery scattered around.
Some more here.
Oh, what you got?
Yeah, grey ware.
Oh, nice.
There's a little base, look, there's the base and the wall is coming up
You've got
there.
keen eyes, I probably wouldn't have spotted that, Phil.
Yeah, but you see, I do a lot of field walking.
What's this then?
This is fantastic stuff, and it suggests the Roman element of this site is more significant than we expected. But we have a problem. Although we're uncovering Roman evidence,
Come and have a look at this.
Oh, not again.
we can't find what we came here for, the Anglo-Saxon cemetery. Our bodies specialist, Margaret Cox, and her assistant Rachel, have been on standby since this morning. But so far, the only thing we've found underneath this green and pleasant land is the digger's nightmare, compacted clay.
This is really hard and dry, isn't it?
Really hard to trail.
The soil is just so hard.
Is it? Yeah. The Anglo-Saxons often buried their dead with grave goods, such as knives, spears or brooches. And we'd been hoping our metal detectorists would point us towards a probable burial. But so far, their only target has been less than spectacular.
Just a big lump of slag.
What might slag be doing in the middle of a field?
Well, looking at the geophysics, they're sort of saying this end could be more of occupation rather than burial, so it could be just a piece of waste from some workshop or something.
I'm going to have to find a very big finds tray for this. 4 hours of digging for one lump of slag in Trench 2 just about sums up this site so far. We've put in a third trench to no avail, and we've extended Trench 1 in the hope of at least finding a ditch that geophys have detected.
Really hard to trail.
And I mean, it doesn't look to be any features in it at all.
Any sign of the ditch, Phil?
Why, nothing at all, John.
I mean, it's so clear on here.
Yeah, I think we ain't really deep enough. I think we're probably going to have to get the digger back in and go on down
Take another
a bit.
spit.
Yeah.
And there's no burials at all.
Well, there again, not in the bit we dug, so there's still room for them to be down further.
What about in the other trench?
Well, I don't know. Katie, you got anything over here?
I've got absolutely nothing, I'm afraid.
That, I reckon, is where we should be down. Look at that, that's a lot lighter.
Yeah, that's the
Devil
natural,
of a
I
lot
think.
lighter. I reckon that's where we should be.
It strikes me digging deeper may be the triumph of optimism over reality.
Can't see anything in it though, can you, Phil?
Hey?
I can't see anything in it. Can't see anything at all. Horrible stuff.
But just when we're despairing over this site,
Looks like a human tooth, that.
I reckon it is. Margaret?
Yeah?
Have
a look on this.
A human, yeah.
Oh, yeah. A nice lower canine tooth.
Which one?
This one. That one.
Ah.
The lower canine. Oh, actually, look at that, Phil. You see that line across there?
Yeah.
That means that when this tooth was developing, when this person was a small child, about the age of 3, because of the position, they actually had some pretty serious problem with their health that interrupted their metabolism and actually affected the way the enamel was laid down, causing that line.
So an ailment that they had at the age of 3
Yeah,
is reflected in their adult
Yeah.
teeth.
Margaret and Phil seem confident this is our first proper Anglo-Saxon find. And although not much, it gives us some hope after what's been frankly a frustrating day. And as our search expands, we're at last beginning to find some other traces of Anglo-Saxon life.
Wow, I've actually found something now. It's a piece of Anglo-Saxon pottery.
Gosh, truth. What sort of date's that then?
6th century, I think.
So that's the top, like that, with the...
That's the rim, yes.
You know, that's more 6th century pottery than I've ever found in Somerset.
Oh.
That's good, isn't it?
Apparently it's very rare here as well.
Yeah. So what, are you finished with this now?
Yes, there might be one feature in here. You can see where it's dark there,
Right.
so we'll dig it out and then that's the end of
And
that
the rest
trench.
is natural?
All natural.
We
We'll
move
finish
on
it.
to the next bit. OK.
So it's goodbye to Trench 3. Meanwhile, the Roman finds discovered by Stuart and Phil this morning have challenged the accepted view of the site's pre-Saxon history.
We've definitely got Samian. No forgot about that. 2nd century.
But I mean, all the pot that you've told me about before, the Roman pot, surely that's been much later than that.
It has been. The bulk of the material we had from the very small excavations was late 4th century. So this may be a spatial thing, that where you've actually got this from is where there's going to be earlier occupation.
That
and you've got
almost,
another.
it could be almost the same pot.
Well, if it isn't the same pot,
it's very.
Oh, come on! This is definitely the same pot. Look, everything about it. It's not going to join, but if you look at the line running along there, you've got it here. All the proportions are the same, so you've actually got a 31. It's called a form 31, and it's a bowl that comes down with sloping sides, and it has a very pronounced kick in the middle. They're classic sort of mid, but mostly later 2nd century types from Central Gaul.
So there may have been a longer Roman presence here than was originally suspected. But we came here to find an Anglo-Saxon cemetery, and the simple fact of it is we haven't found what we're looking for. Look, we've got a mound of earth here, and a trench, and another mound of earth, and another mound of earth, and another huge trench here, and then a long thin trench, and a great long mound of earth there. And what have we found? A tooth.
2 teeth.
Oh, great. So where's the rest of the body? What's gone wrong?
Well, I think the simple answer is we've been looking in the wrong place. We've been digging in the wrong place.
Why?
Because we thought the pipe trench was further over that way than it actually is.
We were told it was further that way.
Well, that's right. The water board did actually tell us earlier in the week that it was further over that way, probably by about 10 metres. So our 2 trenches, which are supposed to be alongside it, are actually too far over that way. And of course, normally we'd rely on John to sort of find things for us, but the pipe's plastic, so you can't see it.
We can't detect it.
So we've wasted a whole day?
No, not at all.
What do you mean, no, not at all?
Look at the results we've got. They're absolutely fantastic. Look at all these ditches, enclosures. I mean, it looks maybe even Iron Age.
Iron Age is the one before the Romans, isn't it?
Yeah, so this could date from 500 BC down to the Roman period, through the Roman period, on into the Anglo-Saxon period. You know, it's over 1,000 years of activity we've got.
Except there isn't 1,000 years of activity. All we found is 2 teeth. What are we going to do?
Well, we'll widen this trench. I think we need to do that. We need to go out the other side to see if the cemetery spreads that way. And then we need to look at some of these features, see what date these are. I mean, perhaps over there, and just see if we get any, you know, Iron Age pottery or something out of it.
It's the end of day 1. Unfurled back there are 9 scene of crime tents, which we were going to unpack in order to fill them up with all the finds that we've got. At the moment, we've got 2 teeth to put in. Tomorrow, let's hope we can fill them all up with skeletons.
History Hit is an award-winning streaming platform built by history fans for history fans. Enjoy our rich library of documentaries covering key events and locations of the medieval period. History Hit's medieval offering features leading historians such as Dan Jones, Eleanor Janega and Kat Jarman. Not only that, but we've a rich library of audio documentaries covering every period of history through our network of podcasts. Sign up now for a free trial, and Chronicle fans get 50% off their first 3 months. Just be sure to use the code Chronicle at checkout.
It's the start of a glorious day 2 in Lincolnshire. And after a frustrating day 1, we have 3 massive trenches, 2 tiny teeth and 1 big goal to find our Anglo-Saxon cemetery. Yesterday we came up with virtually nothing, so we're now peeling back all this land to try to get closer to where we now know the Anglo-Saxon cemetery actually is. But why are we only working on that side of it? Why aren't we working over here closer to the fence?
Because I think we've got to understand this side before we even think about doing anything over there.
But geophys are looking on the other side of the fence.
Well, they are, because when they ploughed and harrowed this field yesterday, all sorts of Roman stuff turned up, you know, great chunks of pottery turned up. And then Chris scanned it with a magnetometer. It was very noisy. And as usual, Stuart's got a theory about what's in the field.
On one of the air photographs, there's a very dark splodge in the corner of that field. It's very concentrated, and it might be evidence of occupation.
So we might get Roman in that field?
And other stuff, probably, yeah.
Last night you were talking about Iron Age as well. That's 1,000 years with the Roman and Anglo-Saxon.
Yeah, well, certainly some of the geophysical signals in this field are sort of big curvilinear and circular features.
So where are we going to put in our trenches today?
Well, I've asked John to target the what might be the Iron Age stuff, and we'll put a thing in over there. We'll certainly draw this back. This is going to occupy a lot of our time. And then we might just go over there and possibly the next field. But we're going to concentrate on this area first of all.
Big trench here?
Yeah.
My favourite spot. This is now a dig of two halves, the elusive Anglo-Saxon cemetery and the increasingly intriguing Roman occupation of the site. There's often a relationship between Roman buildings and Anglo-Saxon burial grounds. So with the aid of John and his team and a field walking survey, we want to find a couple of targets that will help explain how these two eras of Lincolnshire history are connected. And as if that's not enough, we're also going to investigate the possibility of Iron Age occupation.
You want to just stop it there, E? What have we got then?
Basically, we're going to put a trench across this anomaly here to see whether we've got a sort of Iron Age enclosure, Roman enclosure.
So do you think it's a ditch or a wall?
It's for you to find out.
OK.
But our main goal is the Anglo-Saxon cemetery. After the confusion of yesterday, we've decided to extend Trench 1 to the right by 10 metres. And it now looks like we're at last in the right area.
Mick, think I've got a human bone here.
Oh! God, that's the first bit, isn't it? Oh,
It's just sticking in the ground. I think it's sort of heading down like that.
Do you think we should get Margaret over?
Yeah, I should have a look at it. No, it's not.
Oh dear, and it's such bad condition, isn't it?
Most of the bones that you found were in bad condition, weren't they?
It varied depending whether they were within your ridge or furrow.
Yeah.
Okay, we need
But
to...
the stuff that was under the ridges, was that actually quite well preserved?
Yes, some of it was very well preserved, yes.
Yeah. So we've been very bad luck here, isn't it?
Just desperately bad luck here.
I think it's carry on, Katie.
I think so, isn't it?
Afraid so.
Oh look, here's another bone here.
Oh, this is very exciting. It looks like a skull. It looks like there's a pottery with it as well.
Suddenly, within minutes of Katie's discovery, the newly extended Trench 1 seems awash with archaeology.
What have you got?
Can you see
Well,
that?
yeah.
Can you see it's in a dark?
Yeah.
We got. There's another one there, Margaret.
Yeah.
So I wonder if this means that the cemetery's going further back that way now.
Well, I mean, we know it don't go that way. I mean, we've stripped off a big area.
It's absolutely
I think we must be satisfied we're right on the edge of it.
Yeah.
So we've gone from famine to feast in the space of 15 minutes. Typical.
That's very exciting.
You found something?
Oh, we got one, Tony.
Oh, great.
Look, there it is. It's going into the bulk. And you can see it's coming along here. This is the natural, this stuff with the really orangey iron staining, and it goes around there. There's the head. We've got a bit of pottery. And the other side is coming down there and going into the section again.
What do we do now to see if we can find some more?
Well, we try and answer exactly that question. I mean, we haven't yet got even the limits of our own grave, so we've got to find the definition of that.
Can Margaret start excavating this one now?
Not at the minute, not until we've actually cleared all the dirt around it. That's obviously the first thing we got to do. And then really, I think probably I'm going to extend on down there.
If we've got pottery already, does that mean we might find some grave goods in here?
Yeah, I mean, literally, the grave goods are either going to be in the grave or they're going to be in that spoil. We will miss nothing, absolutely nothing.
You better not. You better not. With Phil dealing with at least 2 bodies in this trench, it's now up to Carenza to investigate the Roman element of the site and its relationship to the cemetery.
So we can see in this field here we've got masses of really nice regular responses. But can you see this area in here where it's definite sort of increase in noise? Now that's normally what we would expect from a building.
So can you give us a target where we might have a wall or something definite that would tell us what sort of building it might have been?
Well, I think we'd like a trench in this sort of area here. It's not that clear on the results.
I mean, physically on the ground, it's just around about here.
So we're putting a trench in our new field to evaluate our probable Roman building. But would you believe it? The first thing we come across...
That's bone.
This is exciting news, because previous excavations have shown that Anglo-Saxons sometimes buried their dead right up to, or even in, the walls of Roman buildings. So we may have already found the other side of the cemetery. 250 feet above all this excitement, Stuart and Mick are comparing this site with other cemeteries in Lincolnshire.
Below us, in fact just on the side of that wood, is a place called Lovedon. What was found here a number of years ago is a very, very large Saxon cemetery, whereas the other cemeteries that we see in the landscape round about, and our cemetery might well be one of these, is a number of smaller, almost parochial cemeteries in a way, going with farmsteads and so on.
I mean, certainly the number of burials we've got at our site now is what you'd expect from people burying their relatives next to their farm over a number of generations, isn't it? Well, here's our site coming in now. You can see very clearly how the area that they're now saying they're getting lots of good geophysics, which suggests a Roman villa, is actually very much darker in that field, look.
That's the same dark patch that we spotted on the air photograph, isn't it, Mick? That's the sort of stuff you often get from occupation. Ploughed up humid material,
lots of
occupation
carbon
debris.
fires and stuff like that, but it's very clear from the air now,
It
isn't
is.
it?
I mean,
And that would then put our cemetery one of the sort of outer yards
It would,
of
wouldn't
that.
it? Yeah.
Right to the...
Just beyond the hedge line, between the two trees to the right of the white tent, that's where we found what appeared to be a ploughed out building on the very first morning. You can see where stone had been turned
it's part of the same complex.
It is, isn't it?
Isn't it interesting how you start with a few Saxon burials, you do the geophysics and you get a probable Roman Iron Age site. You do more geophysics and field work and it looks like a huge Roman site. You know, it makes you wonder where it stops.
It does, doesn't it?
Back on the ground, the delicate work of uncovering our skeletons is now well underway, providing Phil and Margaret with a bit of an anatomical mystery.
Looks like she got a tooth in the back of her head.
Actually, I think we've got somebody else's teeth.
And they're such good condition, and there's very little wear on them. So you know, these teeth are from a young person, but somebody who's got their wisdom teeth. So somebody over 20, 21, but not that much older.
But you see, we do have to make this decision of trying to work out which way round she's lying, and we're still being bamboozled by these bally stones.
Well, she could be coming this way, or she could be going slightly that way.
Well, that's right. But either way, in that instance, these stones are lying on the top of her, and they've got nothing to do with her.
But Margaret and Phil aren't the only people with a skeleton on their hands. There's also the body discovered by Carenza in her trench.
So we've got arms here, upper arm bone there, lower arm bone there, another lower arm here, something which looks like it might be pelvis there, and there's a tooth coming up there, so obviously we've got the head at this end, articulated, aligned east-west, just like the others.
I must admit I'm getting a bit blasé about these skeletons.
You shouldn't. This is really exciting. It's the first one we've had over this side of the field for a start. We didn't know the cemetery went this far. We've got a huge geophys reading, which is suggesting there's a big building here. We found a bit of tessera, we found roof tile, all of which is Roman. So it looks as if we've got a Saxon inhumation in a Roman building, and it's the first inhumation we've had this side of this field boundary at all. It could be the key to understanding the relationship between the cemetery and the Roman building.
Not surprisingly, geophys are now very keen to expand their exploration of this field.
We want to actually look a bit closer to the cemetery, which is here, and it may help us to get a better understanding of this building that we believe is here.
There is some disappointment in this increasingly frenetic day. Our possible Iron Age ditch on the edge of the site now appears to be Roman, so it's being recorded and shut down. But there's no let-up in Phil's trench as we begin to unearth our first possible Anglo-Saxon grave good.
Look at this fantastic pot that's just appeared.
I think it's okay for an Anglo-Saxon pot.
Really? It's amazingly complete, isn't it? It's beautiful.
Yeah. But there doesn't seem to be any sign of cremated bone or anything, does there?
No, but we have had quite a lot of bone around this area, so I'm thinking that this is actually another grave cut in here.
It's rather close to the others. We've got skull there, haven't we? And there's another skull there going that way. So I suppose it could be that this is perhaps the foot end of a grave.
Are these quite common to have sort of grave goods in?
Yeah, the pots are sometimes found at the foot or the head end, but not usually in the middle. So
Right.
I think if it is part of the grave, then you've got an end of a grave. But what worries me is the angle the pot's at. And in fact, it seems to be broken there, not complete. And I was just wondering whether it really is part of the grave ritual or not.
I think we'll just have to keep digging and try and expose more. See if there's any bones.
Yep.
This is all incredibly complicated,
I know.
isn't it? You've got another one there.
What looked like a straightforward burial is obviously not that. We've got something else going across here. There are bits of bone here.
Is that a leg bone?
I think it's a leg bone, but we don't have the ends, which would really tell us for sure whether it is, but it looks very much like that. Or it could be a very large humerus, but it could just be a disarticulated bone from anywhere that's got turned over at some stage, maybe with some deep ploughing or something. And there's bone there.
Human again?
Yeah, well, probably. It's difficult to know at the moment, but it's certainly not the straightforward extended burial we thought we had earlier.
So we now appear to have two bodies in Carenza's trench, while Phil's trench has become very crowded. As well as the two bodies discovered this morning, we now have the bones found around the Anglo-Saxon pot. And Phil's just brought the total up to 4 with the discovery of another skeleton. And what's more, this body seems to have been rather important.
Look here, Martin, we've got a spearhead. It's incredibly badly corroded, but I mean, here's the shaft of it. So that's the tip of it where the main wooden spear goes in, obviously, and it's carrying on up here. So we've got now 3 burials in very, very close proximity. I mean, do you think we can start maybe even to draw some sort of conclusions about that? They're all independent. They don't cut one another.
But they might well be a family group. That's the sort of thing we have to start thinking about.
Who's going to have a spear? Is it just going to be your average sort of Joe Saxon, or is this going to be somebody with, you know, a bit of clout?
Up in this area, there aren't so many spear burials. I mean, perhaps 10% of adult males are buried with a spear, and it's been argued by one particular archaeologist who studied weapon burials for this period that the people buried with spears and other weapons were in fact ethnic Anglo-Saxons. They were the descendants of people who had migrated across from the North Sea and actually created England. And that ordinary British people weren't allowed to be buried with spears.
So this guy here could be somebody quite significant then?
In this community, yeah, he's likely to be a head of household or somebody quite important within the people buried here. Not just an ordinary bloke.
So this spear suggests we've uncovered the grave of an important man, probably directly descended from the Angles, who arrived in Lincolnshire from northwest Germany in the second half of the 5th century. And although we use the term Anglo-Saxon to describe this time in British history, this particular cemetery belongs to the Angles, the tribe that gave their name to what is now England. End of day 2, and it's the complete opposite of the end of day 1. We've got finds coming up all over the place. And while what excites me are all these skeletons here, what's exciting the archaeologists is that site over there where we seem to have some kind of Roman building and an Anglo-Saxon skeleton in it. Why is that so interesting?
Because we've got Roman and Saxon together in the same trench, and what we're seeing is the sort of end of Roman culture, if you like, in this area, and the beginning of Anglo-Saxons coming in with their sort of warrior cult, and that's very exciting to have the two together.
And the perfect example of that Anglo-Saxon warrior cult has got to be this spearhead. Can we lift it now?
I think it's just about ready to come, Tony, yeah. Yeah. There we go.
And if we can find this on top of our skeleton, imagine what we might find underneath when we lift the bones tomorrow. Beginning of day 3, and this trench is really getting exciting now. We've got skeletons, finds, whole pots. Katie's just found a beautiful little bead. Lord alone knows what we're going to pull out of here by the end of the day. But yesterday, Mick, you said we were going to expand this whole area to find out more about the cemetery, but you just haven't.
No, it's so complicated. We've got to take this very carefully and slowly now and unpick it all.
Which means what?
Well, I think it means, you know, carefully cleaning, carefully drawing, carefully removing stones. I mean, there looks as if there's other bones in amongst this. There may be a lot of stuff in here, so we've got to be very careful with it.
And what about that trench over there? As far as I can see, they're pretty similar. You've got a load of stones with bodies closely buried into them.
Yeah, but I think over there we're dealing with ruined Roman buildings with the skeletons sort of buried alongside.
What's this then?
Well, this potentially might be a cairn or a constructed mound over burials and with burials put into it. So it's not just rubble probably, but we won't know that till we've unpicked it carefully.
Which means you want me out of the way?
It would help, yeah.
We're now in a race against time. We've got to lift all the skeletons we've found, but we've only 8 hours left to do it. So Trench 1 has become a carefully choreographed sequence of recording and removing layer upon layer of archaeology.
Well, I've got 3 beads.
Oh, wow,
here.
yeah.
One there, one there, round his neck, and another one down here by his fingers. I think they're all made out of glass as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So he was obviously buried with a necklace.
You say he. Hasn't Margaret looked at the body, has she?
She's pretty sure it's a he, but
Right.
Before we take it out...
I'm relieved that he's got a
Sure.
necklace. That's rather like me on holiday.
It may be very crowded in Trench 1, but geophysics had the opposite problem. The Roman aspect of this site seems to be much bigger than the single building we originally expected, and that means a 3rd day of surveying this mammoth site. The trenches in this field are just as busy, and the mysterious appearance of 2 bodies at right angles in Carenza's trench is just the beginning of a hectic day for our osteoarchaeologist Margaret Cox.
So whereabouts are we on this?
This is the upper arm, the humerus, and the shoulder would be somewhere around here. The arm's going off down there, so you should have some hands under there.
Oh, great. So is it...
Got the ribs here.
Is he lying on his face?
Well, I think he's lying very much the same way as the female that Phil's excavating, very much on the side, but sort of slumped forward.
In fact, Phil's trench is just one long series of puzzles. So far we have Katie's crouching skeleton, probably a man, but apparently wearing a necklace. We also have the disarticulated bones around an Anglo-Saxon pot. Then there's someone buried with a spear, indicating their high status. And finally, the mystery of the skeleton Phil's excavating.
Phil, are you any nearer to understanding what's happening with this burial?
If only I wish I was. It's absolutely bizarre. I mean, I'm still... No, I'm absolutely still uncertain. I mean, we know we got the head.
Yeah.
We know we got an arm.
And that's definitely the back of the shoulder coming through there.
Yeah.
So is she slightly on her side, do you think, like Katie's burial?
And then, like, just completely slumped over.
Yeah.
I mean, it's bizarre that a human body can be so logical and that everything is in preordained places, but in this instance, I still haven't got the foggiest idea.
This is where the spear came from yesterday, Mark, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
So is this an arm bone across here then?
No, I think it's a leg bone. You can see most of the lower leg's gone. There's only fragments of the arm bone left.
This skeleton's in a terrible state, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
What's happened to it?
It's difficult to say. So the skull is very crushed. It could have been something's driven over its bones.
It looks as if a tank's been over it, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, that's right, yeah.
So it's not going to be a big job to excavate this one then, and finish it off?
No.
OK, I better let you get on with it.
No,
Get the time.
We had hoped that by removing some of the bodies in this trench, we'd have more room to work in. But would you believe it, as soon as we lift the remains of our spearman and the bones around the Anglo-Saxon pot, another body appears. And this one is missing its head.
Do we understand this burial anymore, Margaret?
Well, it's definitely prone, there's no question about that, and it's definitely an adult.
So it's buried face down?
Yeah. This burial may have its skull still associated with it. It could be between its feet or it could be by the side of the legs.
So they actually cut the head off at times?
Yeah. That's often associated with prone burial.
I always thought it was to do with criminals or somebody they were punishing in some way.
Yeah, that's one of the hypotheses that have been put forward. But very often they're juveniles. You see small children buried like this.
So we won't understand it till it's all cleaned up a lot more.
No, there's still a lot to do here.
Right, so it's all down to you, Rachel.
It's now just before lunch on day 3, and Katie's ready to lift the remains of the first body we found.
I'll just take these beads out first.
Oh, you can just see a flash of red in that, can't you? And hopefully Margaret will be able to tell us for certain whether this necklace-wearing individual is male or female.
This is fantastic. Look at this. It must have been so colourful.
The skull that we can see so far is slightly male, but not absolutely. So we really need to see the pelvis.
How does the pelvis help you decide whether the skeleton's male or female?
In evolutionary terms, the male pelvis is designed for one function, and that's to enable you to stand up on 2 legs. So it's the perfect biomechanical shape to allow that to happen. But that particular shape doesn't actually allow you to have babies as well. So the female pelvis is modified. Thanks. Oops.
Is that the bit you want?
It is, yeah. This actually gives us what we call the sciatic notch, which is this.
Yeah. And how do you tell the difference between a male and female?
Well, broadly speaking, if it's a female, the sciatic notch will be sort of 90 degrees, like that.
Yeah.
And if it's a male, it's nearer sort of 50, 60 degrees. As you can see, this is sort of in between somewhere. But I think generally the shape suggests it's a male. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's probably a male.
Presumably there might be some more beads underneath.
I think we've just about got everything now. Oh, I've got some copper.
Why might a piece of copper be up near the head?
Well, it might be some kind of shroud pin.
Or a brooch if there was a cloak and the head slumped a little bit.
But it looks very round. I'm actually going to have to take out a block, I think. I won't expose the metal.
So we're not going to see what it is?
No, well, there might be fabric attached to the metal block, so I think a conservator really should have a look at it.
But we've only got a couple of hours left, and this isn't the only find that'll need conserving. Our Anglo-Saxon pot is also ready to come out.
Jen, is it going to come out in one piece, do you reckon?
I think it might. It's got a couple of horrible cracks though, so I think we'll do it as carefully as possible. But there we go, coming up. Okay. Got it? Yeah. Should we go upright? Yeah, I think so. Ooh, there we go.
This Anglo-Saxon pot is in excellent condition for its age. And combined with the way the bodies have been buried, the pot adds weight to this being a pagan cemetery, as grave goods aren't a Christian tradition. Over in our other field, Carenza's searching for a link between the Roman and Anglo-Saxon elements of this site. You don't seem to have any more of that skeleton now than we had 24 hours ago.
Well, that's because there isn't any more. It's all been completely destroyed by ploughing. But the great thing is we've got masses of this Roman building here. Have you seen that wall?
Oh, that's a beauty, isn't it?
Yeah, you've got 2 courses plus the foundations.
It's fantastic, isn't it?
Is that pot down there?
Yeah, I mean, that's the brilliant thing about this bit here, which is just lying smashed on the surface. And there was another bit which has gone into Fine's tray now, which was also just smashed on the surface. And presumably they're the last pots that were dropped on the surface here by the last occupants of this house.
But the pot turns out to be late Roman, so we're still looking at a gap of almost 200 years between the end of the Roman settlement and the first burials in our cemetery. On a more positive note, Phil and Margaret may now be close to solving the riddle of the contorted burial in Trench 1.
This is quite an incredible one, isn't it, Margaret?
Yeah, she looks as though she's just been thrown on top of a heap of rubble, doesn't she?
Well, I know, that's right. That's what I felt when I was digging her. I mean, just no idea where she was going to go to next. Got it, Margaret?
All right.
Now then.
Lovely, thank you.
Got it?
Yep. Yeah, what we've got here is the pelvis is actually fused, but what we call the iliac crest hasn't fused, which means we're looking at somebody in their mid to late teens, I would think almost certainly.
I wonder what her relies thought when they saw what sort of grave she was being put into.
Maybe she was buried during some sort of period of conflict where they were having to bury people in a hurry or something like that. And there wasn't time for the sort of due processes of rites of passage and what have you.
That doesn't seem to be in the right place for that.
No, it looks like this, which is actually an adult skeleton, seems to be completely separate. That's all we have of it. But what's interesting is over here I'm getting separate baby bones, well, toddlers really, about over an age of 1. We had a bit of a skull here, some of the hip bone just here, and this is actually just the top of the leg.
Right, so it was lying that way.
It looks like it.
It's intriguing, isn't it? As we've actually been able to try and clear around it, we've actually resolved where the other arm is going.
That's right. Yeah, and she definitely looks as though she'd just been thrown into that grave, and one arm's up here.
That's right.
And presumably the rest has just been cut away by ploughing.
It's certainly free on this side. I'll keep it. Yeah, you're okay, you're okay.
Yeah.
You got it.
Good God.
Hey, look, there's the other arm.
Oh, fantastic.
So, in fact, yes, it's doing
like
that.
Yeah. Excellent.
That's right, yes.
There's another stone underneath as well. I can't believe that came up without literally falling apart. Wonderful.
But what an incredible way of burying somebody.
Well, it's just a total lack of care. She's just clearly been thrown in on top of a pile of rubble, and presumably some more rubble put on top of her.
But presumably, at the minute, it looks not worth giving any grave goods to either.
There don't seem to be any.
So was she a criminal? Were her family under attack? Perhaps we'll never know. But what's certain is that the other bodies in this trench were buried with more respect. The beads and brooch uncovered by Katie are now giving us a fascinating insight into Anglo-Saxon fashion.
This brooch, it's a copper alloy brooch, but judging from the way it seems, it looks like there's some tin plating on the surface.
Oh, there is,
to make it look nice and silvery. And on the iron pin, in the corrosion, there seems to be quite a lot of mineralised textile again. So I just have to change the magnification so that we can see that. You can actually see the weave here.
It's actually the weave of the woman's dress. You can actually see the way that the thread was spun to look a part of her clothing.
Yep.
These annular brooches, were worn in pairs.
And where's the other one then?
Indeed, they've got to get out there and have a look, haven't they?
Yes.
And we're going to try and put the beads into a necklace.
Well, the first thing is they wouldn't be a necklace in the sense of something going around your neck as you're wearing now. It seems from when we can actually see them in situ that they actually run from one brooch to another, so it'd just be a swag or string of beads.
The chain was made in this country, but the amber beads were probably imported from the Baltic, and combined with the brooches, it suggests this particular angle lived during the 6th century. But although Margaret believes the body to be probably male, this jewellery belongs to a female costume. Another mystery we can only ponder. Back on the site, we've only a few hours left. We've already discovered a woman apparently thrown into her grave during a time of stress. Now 2 more burials reveal even more clearly the harshness of life and death in Anglo-Saxon Britain.
I've had a really good fertile around here to have a look at the skull, and I found absolutely nothing.
No fragments or anything?
Nothing, and if it had been trawled by a plough, you would expect just something to remain there. So.
Yeah, you'd expect to find just some parts of the base or something, wouldn't you?
So it does look quite likely that it was buried headless.
Yeah, it's a real shame actually we haven't got the lower body, because quite often what's the case is if they've been decapitated, you'll find the head between the legs somewhere, so it's a bit of a shame we can't have a look at that.
Nice lump of rib cage.
I'll put it all in together. Sure.
So we're starting to expose whatever that is around the rib cage. So
it's quite good, isn't it? Looks very blade-like, doesn't it? Where it goes down and gets wider. Oh, that's definitely a blade. The shaft would have been here, wouldn't it? It's a shame you can't find out the cause of death, really. But that looks like a prime candidate to me, doesn't it?
Well, it could be, I suppose, couldn't it? I mean, it is actually if it is a knife straight in the rib cage, that would be a fairly immediate cause of death.
Most definitely, yeah.
The blade and its gruesome presence in this body's ribcage can only reinforce the belief that life in this Anglian community could often be brutal.
These may have actually been tools of his trade, maybe.
And the discoveries aren't over. This site has one more surprise for us. After 3 days of continuous surveying, geophys have come up with a stunning revelation. Instead of the single villa we were expecting next to the burial ground, they've discovered the remains of a complete Roman community, destroyed by medieval farming and unseen for almost 1,000 years.
If you'd have been here 1,500 years ago, this wouldn't have been an empty field. There'd have been a complete Roman village here, and we would have been walking up the main street along this line. And you can see that on this set of geophysics results.
So we're stood about here in the middle of this street.
And those trenches over there are in amongst this lot here, so they're actually the back of this row of crofts.
So does that mean that there would have been one detached house in each of these?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to think of it as a little farmstead within each enclosure, with the lane at the front where we are, and presumably all sorts of paddocks or vegetable gardens or orchards or whatever, but with the main buildings towards the back, well away from the road. If you think of it in sort of modern terms, it's almost like, you know, you tuck your house at the back away from the row. But the noise suggests the buildings are further back, doesn't it?
Set back, yeah.
Why do you say it's a large settlement?
Well, we've surveyed about 3 hectares so far. That's about 7 acres. And that's the 7 acres we're looking at now.
I mean, if you imagine it as from that dip across that field there, that's the back of the crofts on that side, the back of the gardens that side. And then the other side is the back of these trenches. And then this road's up the middle. You could easily drop a modern or a medieval village into that. And you know, if you imagine all the fences and trees and hedges, you'd think, oh, you know, reasonable sized place. So it's a, you know, it's a fantastic, you know, going from one pipe trench with a few burials to a complete sort of Roman village sat within its fields is fantastic, isn't it?
Not bad for 3 days.
And as we reach the end of 3 exhausting days, we've got at last the chance to take stock of what these Lincolnshire fields have yielded. And you sense many stories of violence and drama surrounding the Anglo-Saxon farming community buried here. The beheaded adolescent interred along with the remains of a toddler. The body buried in its finery. A young woman apparently thrown into her grave. And the peasant warrior buried with his spear, a man descended from the first Angles to settle here. And all of this set against the backdrop of a decaying Roman village. We had no idea, particularly after our disastrous first day, that so much archaeology would come out of a site which started off as a single trench for a water pipe. We've gone from 2 teeth to 10 Anglo-Saxon bodies and a 7-acre Roman settlement that up until now no one even knew existed. And along the way we've had some of our most beautiful finds, the brooch, the 2 spearheads, those lovely little beads. One of our diggers said to me, British archaeology doesn't get any better than this. We hope you agree.